I loaded the last of my gear into the passenger seat of the village maintenance truck. The new fuel pump, sealed in its gray plastic case, went on the floor. It was a heavy bastard, maybe 70 pounds, and it was the only thing standing between the generator at Chignik Lake and a lot of cold, dark houses. The sky was already that deep, bruised color it gets before a winter sunset, and the wind coming off the water had a bite to it. I checked the dashboard. The compass was where it always was, and taped right beside it, on a strip of grimy electrical tape, were the 3 sentences I'd written for myself. Stay in the cab during a whiteout. Conserve heat. Wait for Claire on the radio. It wasn't complicated. I'd fixed enough machinery and enough bad weather to know that improvisation gets people killed. You stick to the plan. You check your supplies. You don't let the cold make your decisions for you. I ran through the list one more time. Fuel gauge showed 3/4 full. Battery terminals were clean. The flare pistol was in the glove box with 2 cartridges. The military surplus sleeping bag was rolled up behind the seat. The emergency beacon, a little orange brick of a thing, sat on the dash, its green power light steady. I tapped it once, out of habit. Nothing on this road could surprise a prepared man. I told myself that, cranked the engine, and pulled out of the Chignik Lagoon garage just as the last sliver of sun disappeared behind the hills. The gravel road climbed away from the water, cutting between black hills and stretches of tundra scoured bare by the wind. For the first 20 minutes, it was just the rumble of the tracks and the hiss of the heater. Then the snow started. It didn't fall so much as it struck the windshield sideways, hard little pellets that sounded like sand. I slowed down, squinting through the wipers. The pump was needed. That was the only fact that mattered. A fishing settlement without heat in a storm like this wasn't an inconvenience. It was a disaster. The radio on the dash crackled to life once. It was Claire's voice, clear and calm the way she gets when things are going to hell.
Scott, weather's closing in fast west of the lagoon. Advise you turn back or shelter in place. Acknowledge.
I keyed the mic.
Copy that, Claire. I'm proceeding to the next marker. I've got the pump.
Static answered me. I tried again. Nothing. The radio was just dead weight on the dash, its little screen dark. I let go of the mic. Up ahead, near a bend marked by a pair of faded orange stakes, I watched the last of the daylight get swallowed by the blowing snow. The world shrank to the cone of my headlights and a wall of white beyond the glass. I switched the cab heater to high and glanced at the compass. The needle held steady. I decided I'd go as far as the next shelter marker, a metal culvert about 5 miles up. That was the plan. Stick to the plan. The truck jolted hard, a bone-deep thump that came up through the seat. The engine coughed once, twice, then settled into a ragged, unhealthy idle. I felt it in my gut before I saw it. I pulled onto the shoulder, the tracks crunching through the deepening snow, and killed the engine. The silence was immediate and total, broken only by the wind screaming against the windows. I got out. Diesel was pouring from a split in the main fuel line, a steady dark stream that was already melting a trench in the snow beneath the chassis. The smell was sharp and wrong in the cold air. I swore, loud and useless into the wind, and fumbled my kit from behind the seat. My hands were stiff, but the clamp went on, pinching the ruptured line shut. The flow slowed to a drip. Too late. I checked the tank sight glass. It was down past the quarter mark. I'd lost too much to make it anywhere. I climbed back into the cab, my gloves slick with fuel. It was getting colder fast. I tried the radio again. Dead. No power at all. I was just sitting there, staring at my own breath fogging the dark windshield, when the radio speaker crackled. It was Claire's voice again, but different. Closer.
Scott, leave the cab now.
The words were clear, but they had a hollow, almost metallic edge to them, like a recording played through a bad speaker. I froze, my hand on the ignition key. "Scott, leave the cab now." It repeated, and this time it wasn't coming from the dash. It was coming from outside, from somewhere in the swirling snow beyond the hood. I looked out at the white nothing. My rule was right there on the dash, 3 lines of black marker on tape. Stay in the cab, conserve heat. Wait for Claire. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. I wasn't leaving. A prepared man doesn't walk into a blizzard because a dead radio talks. A pale yellow light bloomed in the snow out past the hood. It wasn't headlights. It was the sickly sulfur glow of an old work light, swinging slowly as it moved closer. A shape resolved behind it. A tracked vehicle, bigger than mine, boxy and angular. Its windshield was a single yellow square in the gloom. It rolled to a stop about 20 feet away, and I realized its tires weren't leaving any tracks in the fresh snow. The driver's side door opened. A figure in a bulky parka climbed down, raised a gloved hand in a slow, deliberate wave. I didn't move. The cab was shelter. The plan was to wait. But then the truck's battery sparked under the dash, a sharp pop and a fizz of ozone, and the heater fan died with a final sigh. The cold rushed in, immediate and predatory. I watched the stranger stand there, patient as a stone, while the temperature inside the cab dropped enough that I could see my breath crystallizing in the air. The choice wasn't a choice anymore. I shoved my arms into my parka, grabbed the flare pistol and the dead radio handset, and pushed the door open against the wind. The cold hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. Snow needled my face. The stranger watched me come, his features hidden in the shadow of his parka hood. "Scott Webb," he said. His voice was a low, dry bass, calm as if we were meeting in a hardware store. "You have about 20 minutes before the cold makes the decision for you." He walked to the front of my truck, moving with an unhurried efficiency. He was tall and lean under his layers. He produced a heavy tow cable from his recovery vehicle and knelt in the snow to clip it to my front tow hook. "Name's Austin Hicks," he said, not looking up from his work. "Village Road foreman. Nearest operational shelter is the old maintenance station, just west of here. Claire sent me." I'd never heard of an Austin Hicks, but he knew my name. He knew about the pump. He said Claire sent him. I crouched down, my knees cracking in the cold, to check the coupling he'd made. The steel cable was warm under my gloved fingers, not body warm. Heat from within warm, like it had been lying in the sun. "Why no reflective markings?" I asked, nodding toward his vehicle. It was just plain, faded yellow, no stripes, no letters. Austin stood up, brushing snow from his knees. "They were scraped off years ago," he said. He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. He finished the connection and gestured toward his cab. "Tow's set. Your rig's out of fuel and colder than a witch's heart. Ride with me. Station's less than a mile." I knew the danger. You don't get into a vehicle with a stranger in the middle of nowhere. But staying meant freezing solid, right here beside my dead truck. The math was brutal and simple. I climbed up into his passenger seat. The inside of his cab was stiflingly warm and smelled of old coffee and diesel. He didn't turn on his headlights. He just put the vehicle in gear and we started moving, my truck dragging behind us like a dead weight. He drove like he could see through the whiteout, making slight corrections, following a path only he knew. I tried my radio handset again, holding it close to my ear. All I got was a low, rhythmic sound, like someone breathing softly into the microphone. Austin unscrewed the cap of a dented thermos with one hand. "Coffee?" he offered. I took it. The coffee was scalding hot and bitter. I drank it anyway, the heat spreading through my chest. I kept my right hand resting near my thigh, close to the flare pistol in my pocket. "Just up here," Austin said, his eyes never leaving the invisible road. "You can warm up proper, have a look at your fuel line. We'll get you sorted." I drank the coffee. I let the heat seep into my bones. And I let Austin Hicks take me deeper into the storm. The recovery vehicle slowed and stopped. Out the window, I saw a low building, half buried in a drift. Its walls were corrugated metal bolted over old, dark timber. A faded sign, barely legible, read, "Chignik Road Service." There were no other buildings, no lights, just this one squat shape against the endless white. Austin hopped out. A key was already hanging from a nail by the door frame. He took it, unlocked the heavy door, and pushed it inward. A wave of dry, heat-soaked air rolled out. "In you go," he said. I stepped inside. A diesel heater purred in the corner, radiating a palpable warmth. Kerosene lamps glowed on a shelf, their light reflecting off rows of canned goods, tools stacked neatly, and folded emergency blankets. It looked like a proper shelter, stocked and ready. My eyes went to the floor near the door, then to the window. The snow outside was a smooth, unbroken sheet. There were no footprints except for the 2 sets we'd just made. Austin saw me looking. He hung his parka on a peg. "Storm hides tracks faster than you can make them," he said, as if answering a question I hadn't asked. "Get by the heater. Warm your hands. You can inspect your truck after." The dry socks were thick, clean wool. I pulled them on right there by the heater, my feet numb enough that I didn't feel the fabric at first. Austin handed me a metal cup of soup. It was just broth, steaming and salty, and I held it with both hands, letting the heat soak into my palms. He watched me for a second, then walked back out into the vehicle bay. I heard the clunk of a tool, the scrape of metal. I set the cup down and followed. He had the hood of my village truck up, and he was loosening the battery terminals with a wrench. The cold had already crusted the connectors with a white powder. "Hold on," I said. "Leave that." "It's too cold to start," he said, not looking up. His breath fogged around the wrench. "Leave it out here overnight, the coral crack. Ruined." He freed the positive cable, then the negative, and lifted the battery out. It was a heavy square of black plastic, and he carried it inside like it was nothing, setting it on the floor near the purring diesel heater. He came back for my radio handset, which I'd left on the passenger seat. He hung it on a nail driven into a timber beside the generator. "We'll get it reconnected after dinner," he said. "Signal's better in here anyway." I stood in the doorway, the heat from the generator room washing over me. It was safe, warmer than the cab had been, stocked, orderly. My eyes tracked the room, the way they do in a new place, counting exits, noting what's where. That's when I saw the chains. 3 of them, thick as my wrist, bolted to the concrete floor near the outer wall. They ran a short distance, then disappeared into the shadows under the workbench, as if they were holding something down. Austin noticed me looking. He was wiping his hands on a rag. "Roof anchors," he said. "For the winter storms. Wind gets under the eaves, it'll peel this place open like a tin can. Chains keep it on the foundation." It made sense. It was the kind of practical, overbuilt solution you saw out here. I nodded and went back to my soup. About 20 minutes later, Austin was at the little propane camp stove, heating another pot. The radio on the desk crackled, a sharp burst of static that made me jump. Then Claire's voice came through, clearer than any signal had been since I left the lagoon.
"Scott Webb, come in. Scott, this is Chignik Lagoon Dispatch. Acknowledge."
I was across the room in 2 steps. I snatched the handset from the nail before Austin could turn around. "Claire, I'm here. I'm at the old road service station. Austin Hicks has me. He says you sent him." The silence on the other end lasted 3 heartbeats. It wasn't a broken signal. It was a dead stop. Then her voice came back, lower, tighter.
"Scott, no one sent Austin. That station was decommissioned. It's been abandoned for 11 years.
Static washed over her last word, a hissing wave that broke the transmission into fragments. I heard,
"Get out."
and
"Not safe."
before it dissolved completely. Austin was beside me. He took the handset from my fingers, his grip firm but not rough. He clicked the transmit button twice, listened to the empty hiss, and set it back on the desk. "Claire Reynolds," he said, like he was recalling a minor fact. "Good dispatcher. Gets the old records confused sometimes. Thinks the overweight closure report means the building fell down. He went back to stirring the soup. She sounded scared, I said. He didn't look up from the pot. Fear's common. When you're responsible for others, it clouds the facts. I finished the broth. The warmth in my stomach felt like a lie. I reached into the inside pocket of my coat where I kept the emergency beacon. It was a compact orange plastic brick about the size of a deck of cards. Its green power light was off. I pressed the test button. Nothing. I popped the battery compartment. It was empty. I looked at Austin. He was watching me, his pale eyes calm. "Where is it?" I asked. "The battery?" he said. I removed it. A distress signal in a storm like this. It'd bring a helicopter. They'd waste fuel searching the wrong ridge. Get someone killed for no reason. He said it like he was explaining why you don't light a match near a fuel spill. Then he added, "That pump you're carrying weighs about 70 pounds. The generator at Chignik Lake's running on one cylinder. Your sister lives in Anchorage, works at Providence Hospital." The room got very quiet. The only sound was the diesel heater's steady rumble. He knew things he shouldn't. Things I hadn't told him. Things I hadn't told anyone on the drive. "You inspected my truck," I said, "before you approached." He smiled, a faint, dry stretching of his lips. "Rescue depends on knowing what a stranded man is carrying, what he needs, what he's afraid of losing." A dull, rhythmic pounding started then. It was muffled, coming from somewhere deeper in the station. Thump, 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 like someone hitting a wall with the heel of their hand. Austin sighed. Loose sheet metal on the leeward side. Wind catches it. He set the ladle down. "I should check the tow cable's not freezing to your bumper. Won't be a minute." He pulled his parka on and stepped outside, letting in a blast of cold air that made the kerosene lamps gutter. The door clicked shut. The pounding came again. Thump, thump, thump. It wasn't metal. It was too regular, too hollow. I followed the sound. It led me past the bunk room, down a short corridor to a heavy door labeled Tools. The door was locked, a solid padlock through a hasp. The pounding was right on the other side. "Hello?" I said, my voice low. The pounding stopped. A man's voice, raspy and strained, came through the wood. "Who's there?" "Scott Webb, Village Maintenance." A hand slapped against the door from the inside. "He lock you in yet?" "No." "He will. Get this open, please." I looked at the padlock. It was a heavy master lock, frozen shut. "I don't have a key." "Break it, kick it, something." I threw my shoulder against the door. It didn't budge. The frame was solid timber. "I can't. It's too stout." A low, desperate sound came from the other side. Then the voice again, closer to the crack. "My name's Bradley. Bradley Ramirez. I was running a fishing tender out of Perryville. My snow machine quit 2 nights ago, halfway to the lagoon. He found me. Said he'd take me home when the weather cleared. Took my radio. My beacon." I heard a shaky breath. "2 other vehicles have come since I've been here. I heard them arrive. Never heard them leave." The vehicle bay door creaked open. Austin's footsteps sounded on the concrete. I stepped away from the tool room. "Sheet metal's bad," I called out, walking back toward the main room. "Sounds like it's about to tear off." Austin came into the corridor, brushing snow from his shoulders. He looked at me, then at the tool room door. "It'll hold," he said. "Come on, let's get you settled for the night." He led me to a small sleeping room off the generator area. It had 2 metal-framed cots, a shelf with blankets, and a single bare bulb overhead. Bradley's warning rang in my head. He never drives toward either village. Outside, through a high, grimy window, I heard the distinct diesel rumble of Austin's recovery vehicle starting up. "He's leaving," I whispered, mostly to myself. "He's not leaving," a voice said from the doorway. Bradley stood there, hunched and shivering. He must have slipped out while Austin was with me. His wrists were raw, the skin around them rubbed pink and angry. His eyes were dark, exhausted. "He's moving your truck. He does that. Then he comes back." I pulled him into the room and pointed to a stack of fiberglass insulation bats leaning in the corner. "Behind there. Don't make a sound." He squeezed into the narrow space just as the outer door opened. Austin walked in, carrying my truck's battery. He set it on the floor by the heater. "Your truck's in the vehicle bay," he said. "Out of the wind. You fix that split fuel line proper in the morning. She'll be ready to go." He looked at me, waiting for a response. "Good," I said. "I'll get on it first light." Agreeing was the only move. Refusal would have made him ask why. He would have looked around. He gave a short nod, like a satisfied foreman. Then he walked to the station's main door, a heavy steel thing with a reinforced frame. He pulled a thick chain from a hook on the wall, threaded it through the handle and a heavy ring bolt on the frame, and secured it with a padlock. The click of the lock engaging was loud and final. He did it from the outside. Through the window, I saw him walk away toward the vehicle bay, his parka a yellow smudge in the dark. We were locked in. A heated room, no working radio, and a door chained shut from the outside. As soon as his footsteps faded, Bradley crawled out from behind the insulation. We didn't speak. We started searching the room. It felt like the only thing left to do. Under the lower bunk, behind a cardboard box of old engine manuals, we found a plastic tub. It wasn't hidden well. It was just stored there, like something you don't need often but don't want to throw away. Inside were license plates, Alaska plates, some faded, some newer. A handful of fuel cards from different companies. 3 handheld radios, their battery compartments empty, and a stack of laminated photographs. I picked them up. The first showed a man in a heavy coat standing beside a broken-down snowplow. He was smiling, giving a thumbs up to the person behind the camera. In the background was the same yellow, unmarked recovery vehicle. The next photo was a woman in surveyor's gear leaning against a stuck ATV. The yellow truck was there too, parked just behind her. The photos were dated, winter after winter, 2010, 2013, 2017. Bradley pointed a trembling finger at a man in a photo from 2015. Him, that's Carl, ran fuel to Port Hayden, went missing that January. I kept flipping. The photos changed. The later ones didn't show the broken vehicle. They were just portraits. The drivers, facing the camera alone, standing in what looked like the vehicle bay. Their mouths were open, mid-word, as though they were speaking. Their eyes were wide, not with fear, but with a kind of focused intensity, like they were trying to tell the photographer something very important. The yellow truck was never in these shots. It wasn't a pattern of dishonesty anymore. It was a record, a collection. Austin hadn't just trapped us. He'd been doing this for years. The door chain rattled. We shoved the tub back under the bunk and scrambled apart. Austin came in, a wrench in his hand. He didn't look at Bradley. He looked at me. "Fuel line," he said. "Station has the right hose. Let's get it replaced now. No sense waiting for morning." He led me out to the vehicle bay. My truck was inside, the hood still up. He handed me a length of black rubber hose. It looked right, the correct diameter. But when I bent it, I felt something inside. A stiffness, a faint grid-like pattern. I held it up to the work light. Braided into the rubber wall, almost invisible, were thin copper wires. "Static prevention," Austin said, watching my face. "During a storm. Stops a spark near the fuel tank." "I've never seen hose like this," I said. "It's standard issue for village vehicles. Has been for years." "No," I said. "I'm not putting this in." He didn't argue. He walked over to the wall and turned a large red valve. The steady rumble of the diesel heater stopped. The silence was instant. Then the cold rushed in. It came through the seams in the walls, under the doors, a visible fog pouring into the bay. I saw my breath plume white. From the sleeping room, I heard a sharp, choking gasp. Bradley began to cough, a ragged, shivering sound that turned into uncontrolled shaking. Austin watched me, his hand still on the valve. I looked at the hose in my hands, at the thin wires inside it. I looked at the truck that was my only way out. I heard Bradley coughing himself sick in the other room. "Fine," I said, the word ash in my mouth. I fitted the hose. My hands were cold, but the work was simple. Disconnect the old split line, slide the new one on, tighten the clamps. Austin watched every move, his expression neutral, instructive. When it was done, he reconnected the battery. "Try it." I got in the cab, turned the key. The engine cranked once, then caught, settling into a smooth, even idle. It sounded healthy, better than it had in months. Relief, warm and stupid, flooded through me for about 2 seconds. Then I looked down. The tow cable was still attached, running from my front hook to a heavy winch on Austin's recovery vehicle. "Disconnect it," I said. "Let it warm up fully first," Austin replied. "Disconnect it now." He shrugged. He walked over, unhooked the cable, and let it drop to the concrete with a heavy clank. The truck's engine sputtered. It coughed, the RPMs dipping wildly, and then it died. Just shut off. The dashboard lights went dark. I turned the key again. The starter whined, but the engine didn't catch. Austin walked back, hooked the cable up again. "Try it." I turned the key. The engine started immediately, purring like a cat. "See?" Austin said. "The repaired line needs grounding, through the station's equipment. It's a safety feature." I reached over and flipped the radio on. It powered up. Instead of pure static, I heard voices. Faint, layered. A dozen different people talking over each other, all buried under the hiss. A woman's voice, clear for a moment.
"Please wait for the road crew. Do not attempt to walk out."
Bradley had come to the doorway of the vehicle bay, a blanket wrapped around his shoulders. He was staring at the radio, his face pale. "That's Carl," he whispered. "That's his voice." Austin stepped between me and the open cab door. "Enough," he said. His voice was still calm, but it had a finality to it now, like a teacher ending an experiment. "Curiosity is another way to freeze. Get back inside, both of you." He didn't touch me. He didn't have to. He just stood there, blocking the cab, his ice blue eyes on mine until I killed the engine, took the keys, and climbed out. Bradley was already shuffling back toward the sleeping room, the blanket dragging on the floor. Austin followed us in, checked the chain on the door, and turned the heater valve back on. The blessed rumble filled the station again, pushing back the cold that had begun to seep into our bones. "Sleep," he said. "The storm will break by morning. We'll talk about the road then." He left, closing the interior door to the vehicle bay behind him. We heard the outer door open and shut, and then the sound of his recovery vehicle starting once more, moving away into the night. Bradley sat on the edge of a cot, his head in his hands. I stood by the window, watching the empty, snow-blown dark where the taillights had been. The heater roared, pouring warm, dry air into the room. It didn't feel like warmth anymore. It felt like fuel being burned to keep a trap set. The station got quiet after Austin drove off. Bradley just sat on his cot, head in his hands, breathing in a shaky, deliberate way like he was trying to keep something down. I walked over to the window, but there was nothing to see, just the dark and the snow blowing sideways. The heater roared on, pushing out that dry, fuel-smelling warmth that didn't feel like comfort anymore. It felt like something being burned to keep a machine running. I knew we couldn't just wait for morning. Austin's version of morning. I went to the door of the sleeping room and listened. Nothing from the vehicle bay. I turned back to the map on the wall. It was an old USGS topographical map of the area, laminated and yellowed, tacked up beside a shelf of radio parts. The main road was marked in thick red ink, snaking north toward Chignik Lake. But there were newer lines, drawn in pencil, fainter. They came from the south, across a ridge that the map showed as a tight cluster of brown contour lines. No road, not even a trail. One of those lines ended right at the square marked for this station. Someone had written beside it, in a careful, blocky print, "Bring them warm. Keep them useful." I heard Bradley get up. He came to stand beside me, his eyes on the same note. "I saw that," he said, his voice low and rough, "before he put me in the tool room. I asked him what it meant. He just smiled and said it was the foreman's duty." "It's a trap," I said. "The truck starting only when it's hooked to his winch. The wires in the fuel line. It's not just about keeping us here. It's about keeping the truck connected." Bradley nodded, his eyes hollow in the lamplight. "So starting it ain't enough." "No," I said. "We have to break the connection. Whatever's in the floor, whatever that cable's really hooked to." We didn't say anything else. We both lay down on the cots, fully dressed, and pretended to sleep. I watched the shadows from the kerosene lamp jump on the ceiling. The plan wasn't a plan yet. It was just a direction. Find the connection, break it, get to the truck. Don't end up like the faces in the photographs. A few hours later, in that deep dark just before a winter dawn, the radio on the desk crackled to life by itself. I was already awake. I saw the green power light blink on. No one had touched it. Then Claire's voice came through, clearer than any signal we'd had.
"Scott Webb, come in. Scott, this is Chignik Lagoon Dispatch. Acknowledge."
I was across the room in 2 steps. I grabbed the handset. "Claire, I'm here. I'm at the old station."
"Thank God,"
she said, and I could hear the relief break in her voice for just a second before the professional calm snapped back.
"Listen, the storm aircraft is grounded. I cannot get a visual, but I can hear your emergency beacon's carrier wave. It's faint, but it's there. If you can restore its battery, I can get a fix. Do you understand?"
"Yes," I said. "I have the beacon. The battery's gone."
"Find it,"
she said.
"Is Bradley Ramirez with you? The missing fisherman. I need a confirmation."
"He's here," I said. The door to the vehicle bay opened. Austin stood there, his parka dusted with fresh snow. His eyes went from me to the handset in my hand. His face didn't change. Claire's voice rushed out of the speaker, urgent.
"Scott, do not let him repair anything else. Do you hear me? Do not let him—"
Austin crossed the room in 3 long strides. He didn't grab the handset from me. He wrapped his gloved hand around the cord where it plugged into the radio unit and yanked. The plug tore free in a shower of sparks. Then he lifted the whole radio, a heavy, metal-cased thing, and brought it down on the corner of the desk. Once. Twice. The plastic casing split open, spilling circuit boards and wires onto the floor. The green light died. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the hiss of the heater. Austin set the broken radio down gently. He looked at his own hand, flexed his fingers. "I apologize," he said, his voice that same dry, reasonable bass. "That was intemperate. Old equipment, frayed wires. They can make a man lose his temper." I was staring at his hand, his right glove. Where he'd gripped the cord and smashed the radio, the leather was split open along the knuckles. Beneath it, the skin wasn't red or raw. It was black, a deep, shiny black, like old ice. And it was spreading, a web of dark frost creeping up from the tear toward his wrist. He saw me looking. He casually pulled the cuff of his parka sleeve down over the glove. "The cold gets into everything out here," he said. "Now, let's see about that generator." He walked out, back toward the vehicle bay, leaving me standing there with the dead handset in my hand. Bradley came out from behind the insulation bats, his face pale. "You see it?" I whispered. "I seen it weeks ago," Bradley said. He sat down heavily on a cot. "When he first brought me in, his hand brushed mine reaching for a coffee cup. It wasn't cold. It was empty, like touching a stone that's been in a freezer for 100 years. He took a shaky breath. "Claire tried to tell you, back when you first got on the radio." She couldn't finish. Let me finish it. He told me the story then, the one the village probably still tells around kitchen tables when the wind howls a certain way. Austin Hicks, road foreman. 11 years back, there was a slide, a whole ridge let go west of the lagoon. It buried the original road maintenance station, the one that used to sit up on the pass. Austin was inside with 2 junior workers. They had a recovery truck with them. The search team dug for 3 days. They found the truck's tow cable, stretched out and frozen into the ice like a steel root. At the end of it, they found a hand. Just a hand, severed at the wrist, frozen gray and hard. They identified it as Austin's from an old ring. They never found the rest of him. They never found the 2 workers. They declared the site a total loss and decommissioned the station. But after that, Bradley said, his eyes fixed on the floor, people started hearing things. Truckers on the haul road between Perryville and the lagoon when the weather turned bad. They'd get static on the CB, then a clear voice giving road conditions, offering assistance, a low, dry voice, saying he was the foreman, saying he could tow them to shelter. A few of those drivers. Their rigs would be found later, parked neat as you please, engines cold, cabs empty, no sign of a struggle, just gone. I looked out the grimy window toward the vehicle bay. Austin was out there, standing beside his yellow recovery vehicle. The snow was falling thick, but the ground around his boots was smooth. No footprints. The flames in the heater's exhaust pipe, visible through another window, didn't blow away from him. They bent inward, toward him, like he was drawing the warmth out of the air. And from the shelf of broken radios, the ones he'd collected, a low whisper began. Not one voice. Dozens. Layered, murmuring, pleading. A word here and there. Cold. Wait. Help. Bradley hugged his arms around himself. He ain't a man. He's a hole. A hole in the cold that wants to be filled up. Austin came back inside, brushing non-existent snow from his shoulders. He looked at us, his pale eyes calm. Generator's fuel pump is failing, he announced, like a foreman giving the day's assignment. It'll seize before the next front hits, but you have a replacement. He looked right at me. The one in your truck, the 70-pound pump for Chignik Lake. He'd already unloaded it. It sat on the floor of the generator room, its gray plastic case next to the humming diesel unit. You fix the station's generator with that pump, Austin said, and I will personally tow your truck with both of you in it to Chignik Lagoon. The storm will weaken by tonight. You have my word. Bradley grabbed my arm. Don't, he hissed. Every person who fixes something for him becomes part of it. I seen it. He gets them working. Then they start hearing the voices. Then they just walk toward the radio when it calls. Don't help him. Austin's expression didn't change. He walked to the tool room door, took a key from his pocket, and opened the padlock. Bradley, he said, his voice gentle, you need to rest. You're not thinking clearly. He guided Bradley, who was too weak to resist much, back into the tool room and closed the door. The lock clicked again. He came back and handed me a ring of keys. Everything you should need. The job is straightforward. I will observe. I took the keys. They were cold. I nodded, like a subordinate accepting a task. I'll need to inspect the old pump first, see how it's plumbed. Of course, Austin said. He stepped back, giving me space, but he stayed in the doorway, watching. I opened the generator housing. The smell of hot metal and diesel washed over me. The fuel pump was an older model, bolted to the side of the block, and I saw it immediately. The wiring, thin copper strands, just like the ones braided into the hose he'd given me for my truck, were spliced into the pump's electrical connections. They didn't go to a battery. They ran down the side of the generator, disappeared into a hole drilled in the concrete floor. I reached out, my fingers hovering near one of the strands. I didn't have to touch it. A whisper brushed against my ear, not from the room, but from inside my head. A woman's voice, terrified. Please, I just need to get warm. Then a sharp mechanical click, The voice cut off. Another strand. A man sobbing, "My kids are waiting, I have to." Click. I pulled my hand back. Austin was still in the doorway, his head tilted. "It's a repeater system," he said, as if explaining a simple piece of engineering. "The station cannot survive alone. It needs messengers to carry warnings to the road. The cable grounds the station through their vehicles. It turns their engines into transmitters. It's a rescue process." I understood then. The tow cable wasn't just for towing. It was a live wire. It connected the truck's electrical system, its radio, to whatever was under this concrete slab. The station was a parasite. It needed a host, a running engine, a warm body, someone to speak for it. "The repair," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I can do it." I worked methodically. I disconnected the old pump, my mind racing. The new pump from my truck was a direct match. I bolted it into place. As I connected the fuel lines, I left one terminal on the electrical connection deliberately loose, just a thread of contact. Then I rerouted a secondary fuel return line through a cracked pressure valve I'd spotted on a shelf. It would hold. For a while. Austin watched every move. "Is it safe?" he asked when I was done, wiping my hands on a rag. "It'll hold," I said, "as long as the generator stays below half load. Any more than that, the vibration will shake that terminal loose. Could cause a short." He believed me. He needed to believe me. The generator had to run. The second front of the storm was coming. I could feel the pressure dropping in my ears. He nodded. "Good. Start it." As I reconnected the battery and hit the start switch, I caught Bradley's eye through the gap where the tool room door didn't quite meet the frame. I palmed a small wrench from the toolbox, and when Austin glanced toward the roaring generator, I flicked it across the floor. It slid under the door. I saw Bradley's fingers curl around it. The generator thrummed to life. The lights in the station brightened. The heater's blower kicked up a notch. And from the shelf of dead radios, the whispering became a chorus. Overlapping voices, talking, begging, reporting road conditions that were decades old. I felt a tug, a physical pull, through the soles of my boots. It was the same feeling I'd had in my truck when the engine died without the cable. A connection, snapping taut. Outside in the vehicle bay, I heard my truck's engine turn over and start. Austin. It was a dry, rustling sound. "You see?" he said, his eyes bright. "The road is opening." He walked to the vehicle bay's outer door, the big rolling one, and unlocked it. He shoved it open. Wind and snow blasted in. "Drive!" he shouted over the noise. "Follow my track. I'll bring Bradley." I ran to my truck. The engine was running smooth. The tow cable was still attached, running from my front hook to his winch. I didn't touch it. I climbed into the cab. In the rearview mirror, I saw the tool room door open. Bradley stumbled out, the wrench in his hand. He looked at me, then at the open bay door, then at the radio shelf. A single voice rose above the others from the speakers. It was deep, raspy, familiar. It said, "Bradley." Bradley stopped. He turned toward the desk, his face going slack. "I have to answer," he mumbled, and he started walking toward the whispering radios, his steps mechanical. "Bradley, no," I yelled, throwing the truck door open. He didn't hear me. I jumped out, grabbed him by the back of his coat, and pulled. He fought me. He was thin, weakened, but the strength in him was terrifying, like the cold itself had gotten into his muscles. He elbowed me in the ribs, his eyes vacant. "I have to answer," he repeated. I saw a heavy tow strap hanging on a hook. I lunged for it, looped it around Bradley's waist, and yanked it tight. Using the truck's fender for leverage, I pulled him away from the desk, away from the copper wires snaking across the floor. Austin stepped into the doorway between the generator room and the vehicle bay. His face was different. The skin was grayer, looser, like wax that had melted and refrozen. His jaw seemed swollen, slack. He was safer, Austin said, his voice guttural now, when he accepted the help. I didn't think. I grabbed the wrench from where it had fallen at Bradley's feet, turned, and threw it at the shelf of radios. It hit the central speaker grill with a crash of breaking plastic and tearing wire. The chorus of voices cut off in a burst of static. The generator screamed. The lights flickered wildly. A deep metallic groan shuddered through the building, like the whole structure was straining against its chains. From the generator room, I heard the spit and sizzle of sparks, the loose terminal. Then a hiss, fuel, under pressure, spraying. Orange light flared in the doorway behind Austin. Flames, racing along the braided copper wires that ran across the floor, following them like fuses. Austin reached for me, his black-gloved hand stretching out. Frost erupted from his sleeve, a jagged spike of ice that shot out and stabbed into the metal wall panel beside him, pinning his arm in place. He stared at it, confused, as if the cold had finally turned on him. I dragged Bradley, still half fighting, toward the open bay door. The cold outside was a physical wall. The tow cable, still connecting my truck to Austin's winch, suddenly went tight with a deafening clang. The truck's tires, which were turned toward freedom, skidded sideways on the concrete, pulling the vehicle back toward the burning building. The station wasn't letting go. It was reeling its power source back in. I saw it then, on the maintenance rack beside the door. An oxyacetylene cutting torch, its tanks still half full. I shoved Bradley toward the passenger side. "Get in." I grabbed the torch, its hoses snaking behind me, and climbed into the driver's seat. Bradley fell in beside me, slamming the door. Outside, through the blowing snow, the station burned, and the yellow recovery vehicle sat silent, its cable taut as a guitar string, pulling us backward into the fire. The engine started with a sickening lurch. It wasn't the truck starting. It was the cable, the one still hooked from my front bumper to the burning station behind us, jerking taut and pulling us into motion. I slammed it into gear and steered toward the last orange stake I could see, fighting the wheel as the cable dragged across the snow behind us like a plow line. It wasn't just cutting a trench, it was tearing something up. As the cable stretched and pulled, the ground itself seemed to resist. The snow heaved, and from beneath it came a sound. Not metal, not ice, but voices. Dozens of them, screaming all at once, a raw, ragged shriek that rose up through the white. Bradley clamped his hands over his ears, his eyes screwed shut. I glanced in the side mirror. The station was an orange smear in the blizzard now, flames licking up through the roof, and behind us, rolling out of the smoke, was the yellow recovery vehicle. Its windshield was empty. No one at the wheel. It just followed, patient as a shadow. The cable jerked again, a violent yank that swung the back end of the truck sideways. We skidded, the tires finding no purchase, and came to a stop pointed at the trees. The engine died. The screaming from under the snow faded to a low, collective moan. I didn't think. I shoved the door open against the wind, grabbed the cutting torch from where it had rolled to the floorboards, and climbed out. The cold was a slap, stealing my breath. I knelt in the snow beside the cable, my back to the oncoming recovery vehicle, and sparked the torch to life. The blue flame hissed, a tiny, fierce sun in the white gloom. I touched it to the steel cable where it met my tow hook. Snow blew into the flame, sizzling and spitting. The metal began to glow, then drip. Molten beads fell and hissed in the snow. I kept the torch steady, my hands already going numb. I could hear the recovery vehicle coming. Not the engine. It was silent. I could hear the crunch of its tires on the snow that wasn't there, a sound that arrived a second before the vehicle itself. I didn't look up. The cable was half severed, strands snapping with little pops. It wasn't fast enough. The yellow front grille filled my vision. The winch on its bumper reached out, not with a hook, but with a kind of grasping motion of the cable itself, and latched onto the back of my truck with a sound like a bear trap closing. My truck's engine gave one last shudder and went still for good. The cab speaker crackled. Austin's voice, dry and calm as ever, filled the space.
Scott, the cold is just wind. The road is just snow. Reconnect the original tow line. I will provide warmth, fuel, and a clear route to shelter.
Bradley leaned across the seat, his face pressed against the passenger window. "Leave it," he shouted, his voice muffled by the glass. "Just leave it, Scott." He was right. We should run. But the pump was in the back, the sleeping bag, the flares, everything that stood between us and freezing solid out here in the open. I looked at the dashboard. The little digital compass display, the one that usually showed distance to Chignik Lake, was blinking. It didn't say lake. It said road service. The letters glowed a soft, sick green. The station was a burning wreck behind us, but the truck still knew where home was supposed to be. I climbed back inside, pulling the door shut against the wind. The warmth from the heater was already gone, replaced by a deep, settling chill. "We have to go," Bradley whispered. He was staring at the compass, too. My first rule was taped right there on the dash, under a smear of fuel. Stay in the cab during a whiteout. Conserve heat. Wait for Claire on the radio. I'd written those words myself. I'd believed them. But the cab wasn't shelter anymore. It was the thing keeping us tethered. And the voice on the radio wasn't rescue. It was the trap reminding you what you were supposed to want. Help wasn't safety. Safety was what you carried yourself. I reached under the dash, found the main battery cables, and pulled my knife from my belt. The insulation was stiff with cold. I sawed through the positive cable first, then the negative. Wires sparked and went dark. I grabbed the compass, peeling the tape off the dash. I shoved the flare pistol and the 2 cartridges into my coat. My fingers found the little orange brick of the emergency beacon in the glove box, and I popped its empty battery compartment open, just to make sure it was still gone. I tucked the cutting torch under my arm. "Out your side," I said to Bradley. "Now." We clambered across the seat and pushed the passenger door open, tumbling out into the deep snow. As soon as our weight was gone, the truck began to move. Slowly at first, then with a grinding lurch it rolled backward, still tethered by the winch cable to the recovery vehicle. It dragged itself toward that open yellow maw, taking the pump, the fuel, the sleeping bag, everything I'd thought I needed, with it. I stood there, the compass cold in my bare hand, and watched it go, letting it hurt, letting the fact settle that the tools weren't worth our lives. From the truck's cab speaker, Austin's voice erupted, not calm anymore. It was a raw, scraping howl.
"You will freeze!"
I pulled a flare from my pocket, cracked it against the striker, and threw the sputtering red flame into the trail of diesel fuel leaking from the truck's torn line. Then I turned, hooked Bradley's arm over my shoulder, and ran. The fire caught with a soft whoomp. It raced along the fuel trail, a line of orange eating its way across the white, following the path back toward the station. We were maybe 50 yards up the shallow slope of a ridge when the world behind us turned daylight. The old building didn't just burn, it erupted. Orange light bloomed, swallowing the shape of it, and the roof fell in with a sound like a sigh. The chorus of radio voices, the whispers, the pleas, the road reports, swelled into one unified, deafening shriek. Then it cut off. Just silence. For a second the storm seemed to clear, the wind dropping. In the heart of the flames, I saw shapes, human shapes, standing still in the fire, and one of them, taller than the rest, slowly raised an arm. It wasn't a wave. It was a point, straight at me. Then the ground beneath the station gave way. The whole mess, flames, timbers, the yellow recovery vehicle still hooked to my truck, sank into the snow like it was being swallowed. The white surface closed over it, smooth and unbroken. The light was gone. The wind came back, howling. We kept moving. My compass needle shook, but it held, pointing the way I hoped was toward Chignik Lagoon. The problem was the road. The actual marked road had vanished under wind-scoured drifts. All that was left were the old orange stakes, planted years ago to mark the route. We found them one at a time, wading waist-deep toward each one, but some of them pointed different ways, bent by ice or lying. We tied ourselves together with a length of emergency rope from my pack. Bradley's boots were soaked through, his steps becoming a clumsy shuffle. My own fingers, wrapped around the compass, had gone from aching to a deep, worrying numbness. I'd stop, shove my hands under my armpits, and count to 30, watching our back trail. A yellow glow appeared on the ridge behind us. Not fire, the sulfur work light of the recovery vehicle. It was moving again, without tracks, floating over the surface of the snow. It didn't rush, it just came, steady, relentless. Every time we paused to find the next stake, I'd look back and it was closer. I stopped looking for long. By the time we stumbled upon a raised hump in the snow that meant a buried road culvert, Bradley was done. He just folded, collapsing against the concrete curve. I knelt, rubbing his hands between mine, trying to get feeling back. I tore open a packet of hot sugar gel with my teeth and squeezed it between his lips. He swallowed by reflex. His feet, when I pulled his boots off, were waxy and white, rigid. The work light reached the edge of the storm behind us, maybe 100 yards back. It illuminated the falling snow in a sickly dome. Bradley grabbed my wrist. His grip was weak. "If he comes," he said, each word a puff of fog. "You keep walking." That's what got me. Stopping. "I'm not leaving you," I said. "You can't carry me." He was right. He was a big man, weakened but still solid. And my own toes were screaming with a sharp, burning pain I knew was frostbite. I got him back on his feet. We took a dozen steps, then another dozen. He was leaning his whole weight on me, his breaths coming in ragged, wet gasps. We made it maybe another 50 yards before his legs buckled for good. The recovery vehicle emerged from the snow beside us as if it had been there all along. Its passenger door swung open. A wave of dry, artificial heat rolled out. The cab was a cave of golden light. Austin's voice came from the open doorway. "His feet are dying, Scott. You have minutes. Load him inside. The station's replacement has already been prepared. He can be saved." Bradley's hand fumbled, gripped the sleeve of my coat. He pulled me down. His lips were at my ear. "That," he whispered, "is not a road." I looked past him, into the cab. The heater glowed, and pressed against the inside of the windows were faces. Dozens of them, layered, transparent. Their mouths were open, moving, but no sound came out. Carl from Port Hayden, the woman from the surveyor's photo, all the ones from the laminated pictures. I dragged Bradley back, away from the open door, through the deep snow. He was dead weight. I got the flare pistol out, my hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped it. I aimed not at the cab, but at the fuel tank on the vehicle's side. I fired. The cartridge hit with a thwack and burst into red flame. Fire raced over the yellow metal, blackening it, and the fuel tank went up with a hollow boom. The vehicle burned, a roaring pyre in the middle of the empty white. But the engine didn't stop. It kept running, a low, grinding idle from inside the fire. And Austin's voice came from it, not from a speaker, but from the engine block itself. "You are a poor student of the cold." I turned my back on it and hauled Bradley toward a higher ridge I could see ahead, where the dark shape of an old aviation marker, a tripod of rusted poles, stood against the sky. He tried to help, crawling on his knees, leaving tracks in the snow that were too pale, almost bloodless. We reached the marker. I propped him against one of the poles, where the wind was a little less. My fingers were clumsy blocks of wood. I fumbled the emergency beacon from my pocket, then the single battery I'd taken from the station's shelf, the one Austin had removed from my beacon days ago. I slotted it in. The little green power light glowed steady. I pressed the transmit button, holding it down, sending the distress code Claire had made me memorize. My voice was gone, so I just keyed it, over and over, into the hissing static. For a long time, there was nothing. Just the wind and the cold and the burning in my lungs. Then the beacon's tiny speaker crackled.
Scott Webb, this is Chignik Lagoon Dispatch.
Claire's voice was clear, tight with focus.
Signal confirmed. I have your position. Can you hear me?
I keyed the mic twice, yes.
Good. Heading is 085, due east. Keep the ridge on your left. Distance approximately 4 miles. A snow machine is en route. Acknowledge.
I keyed twice again. Yes. I looked down at the compass. The needle settled. 085. I looked back the way we'd come. The burning recovery truck was gone. The snow where it had been was smooth. And the tracks, Bradley's crawling tracks, our stumbling path, were gone too. Filled in as if we'd never passed. The snow kept falling. I held the beacon in my hand, the little green light a steady, stupid star in the white gloom, and I just kept keying the mic. Yes. 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 Bradley slumped against the rusted pole, his breathing a thin, wet rattle. I kept my back to the place the fire had been. The compass in my other hand said 085, east. I tried to make my legs move. They came about 20 minutes later. The sound was wrong at first, not an engine, but a high, straining whine cutting through the wind. Then a single headlight appeared, bobbing over the ridge to our left, a snow machine with 2 figures on it. It slid to a stop in a spray of powder, and Claire was off it before the track stopped turning, a bundle of orange blankets under one arm and a red medical kit in her hand. The other rider, a guy in a bulky snowsuit, stayed on the machine, his eyes wide. "Scott," Claire said, her voice raw. She dropped to her knees beside Bradley, her hands already pulling back his parka hood, feeling for his pulse at his neck. "I've been searching since that first broken call. God. His feet. Austin," I said. The word came out cracked. "The station. It's gone." He had voices in the wires. Claire didn't look up from Bradley. She was wrapping a foil blanket around him, her movements fast and precise. "Tell me later. Can you stand?" I pushed myself up. My legs held, but they were distant things, like pillars of wood. The village guy helped me onto the back of the snow machine, behind Claire, and then they lifted Bradley between them, laying him across the long seat in front of her. He was a dead weight, his head lolling. Claire climbed on behind him, cradling him against her, and shouted to the driver, "Clinic, now." We rode. The world was a tunnel of blowing white and the roar of the engine. I held onto the back rack, my frozen hands locked around the metal. I looked over my shoulder once. The ridge behind us was just a darker shade of gray in the storm. No yellow light, no fire, just the snow, already filling in our stumbling path as if we'd never been there at all. Bradley died before we reached the clinic. I didn't see the moment. I was staring at the back of Claire's helmet, at the village coming into view. A few scattered lights in the purple dusk. But I felt it. The machine didn't slow, but Claire's posture changed. The urgent, forward-leaning tension went out of her shoulders. She just held him tighter, her head bowing for a second. Then she straightened and yelled something to the driver. He nodded and didn't slow down. At the clinic, a low prefab building next to the airstrip, it was all bright lights and too warm air that stung my face. People in coats took Bradley from Claire. There was a flurry of movement, then a quiet. A doctor I didn't know came over to where I was sitting on a gurney, my boots in a puddle of meltwater on the floor. Claire was talking to him, her voice low. She came and sat beside me while he cut my boots off. "Exposure and exhaustion," she said, not looking at me. She was watching the closed door to the other room. It finished what Austin started. She reached over and took one of my hands, turning it over in hers. The skin was waxy, white and red in patches. "You've got frostbite, both feet, some in the fingers. It's not catastrophic, but you're off them for a while." "The truck," I said. "The pump. It's all out there." "I know," she said. The doctor was applying a salve to my toes, the touch a distant, fiery ache. "The village council met an hour ago. The maintenance truck, the generator pump for Chignik Lake. It's unrecoverable. The trust is too for now. They'll call it a costly misjudgment. A mechanic who drove off the road and lost everything." "It wasn't a road," I said. "I know." She finally looked at me. Her eyes were tired, the kind of tired that goes right down to the bone. "A search party went out at first light. They found the place. There's no station, just a patch of scorched snow and some twisted metal. They pulled up a length of buried tow cable, frozen into the ground like a tree root. That's it. No building, no truck, no bodies." I thought about the laminated photos under the bunk. Carl from Port Hayden, the surveyor, all the open mouths. "Bradley," I said. "He's confirmed. That's something. His family in Perryville knows he was found." She stood up, her knees cracking. "They'll want a statement from you. Keep it simple. You got lost. The truck broke down. You tried to walk out. Bradley didn't make it. You don't have to mention the voices." I didn't. When the deputy came by later, a young guy with a clipboard, I gave him the simple version. I saw him try to make the details line up. The distance, the timeline, the lack of a building where I said there was one. He finally just wrote it down and told me to come by the office when I could walk. The cost wasn't just the machinery. It was the one man who'd warned me to walk away, and I'd been too busy saving the truck to listen soon enough. 3 weeks later, I was back in the Chignik Lagoon garage. It was a Thursday afternoon. The place smelled of concrete dust and stale diesel, the way it always did. I was on crutches, the rubber tips squeaking on the oily floor. Claire was over at the airstrip, checking the incoming weather reports for a medevac flight. She'd asked me to look at the new backup radio for the dispatch office. The main one had fried in a power surge. I had the replacement receiver on the workbench under the harsh fluorescent lights. It was a simple job. Resolder a loose connection on the circuit board, replace a fuse. My hands were still stiff, the fingertips numb and clumsy, but I could manage a soldering iron. The garage was quiet, just the hum of the lights and the distant sound of the wind outside. I finished the joint, plugged the receiver into a test speaker, and turned it on. The dial lit up with a soft green glow. I tuned it to the local emergency band, expecting the usual empty hiss of an unused frequency. Instead, a voice came through, clear, devoid of static. It was my own voice.
"Scott,"
it said.
"leave the cab now."
A cold wave washed down my back. I stared at the speaker, my own voice, the rough baritone I heard every day but flattened out, emotionless, instructional. I reached out and turned the power switch off. The green light died. The speaker should have gone silent. From the dead, unpowered speaker, the voice repeated,
"Scott, leave the cab now."
It wasn't a recording. It was a presence, a thing being pushed through a wire that had no right to carry it. I looked at the soldering I'd just done, the new copper trace I'd laid down. It looked clean, normal. Outside, through the garage's high, grimy windows, I saw it begin to snow. Thick, heavy flakes. They drifted down, already starting to coat the gravel of the road that led out of the lagoon, the one that wound its way north toward Chignik Lake. Austin had lost the station. He'd lost the yellow truck. He'd lost the battery and the pump and the chain of trapped vehicles. But he hadn't lost the method. The method was the thing itself. The offer of a fix. The warm cab. The voice on the radio telling you exactly what you needed to hear, using your own fear to shape the words. Help turned into a chain. Rescue as a way to hook you to something that would never let go. I didn't think. I swiped a ball-peen hammer from the tool rack beside the bench. I raised it and brought it down on the receiver. Once. The plastic casing split. Twice. The circuit board shattered. A third time, for good measure, crushing the speaker cone into a crumpled tin flower. The voice stopped. I stood there, the hammer heavy in my hand. The silence in the garage was complete. Through the windows, the snow continued to fall, covering the road, smoothing over the tracks, making the world outside a blank white page. I set the hammer down. The crutches were leaning against the bench. I picked them up, tucked them under my arms, and turned off the fluorescent lights. The garage sank into a deep, tool-shadowed gray. I didn't look back at the broken radio on the bench. I just made my way to the door, stepped out into the cold, quiet afternoon, and pulled the door shut behind me with a solid, final click.